I'm Michelle with Michelle Loves Books, and today's video is kind of a celebration for my 1-year Booktube anniversary. I started my channel end of last May. It is now the end of June, so it's been a little bit over a year. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do to celebrate this moment. You know, it's definitely something to be celebrated because it's a lot of work, and this is your period of self-discovery, trying to figure out what you want out of your channel, getting used to being on camera. So just a lot happens in your first year. Everything, you learn so much within your first year of Booktube. So without further ado, I have 12 things that Booktube has changed about my reading. For one, I'm a much more critical reader now. I notice things that I never used to pay attention to when I was reading before. Things like writing style, the plot, the world, the politics of the world, how thorough the author has really put together the world, and the characters. I am such a character-driven person, and now that I have been reading so much, I can see when a character hasn't been fully developed, and it's kind of becoming a problem for me, which, becoming a critical reader, I'm still kind of on the fence of whether or not this is good or bad, because there are some books that several years ago I probably would have enjoyed, but because I look for these things now and I expect these things when I'm reading, I notice them as flaws and I don't enjoy the books as much. So I don't know, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, either way. Also, other things that I never really noticed are tropes. Things like relationship tropes, like the best friend love interest trope, the love-hate interest trope. I'm starting to notice that I haven't really read a lot of these tropes, like the love-hate. I think I've only just recently read The Cruel Prince, which is love-hate. Or hate to love trope, The Cruel Prince, and I'm going to assume that the book I just started, A Court of Thorns and Roses, does a love-hate or hate to love trope as well. I don't know if maybe I've read these tropes before, but I just didn't recognize them. I didn't identify the type of relationship. You know, I was just reading along and not really trying to identify things like that. So that's something that Booktube has done for me as well. Another big one that I hear a lot of Booktubers say that they really don't love, the love triangle. Honestly, I do love the love triangle. It causes for some drama, and it's always just fun. You know, it's fun to have these like, who's she gonna end up with? Who does she choose? This guy's being a douche. No, she should be with this guy. Like, I love that dynamic in books. So I really like the love triangle trope. However, with how much I have been reading this very popular trope, the Divergent series, Hunger Games series, I'm identifying now when I think that it was very well done, when things aren't over the top, over-explained, when the author just kind of really wants to convey something, so they keep repeating the same things. I know I read a lot of these kinds of things before Booktube, but the more and more I see that in books, the more it just drives me absolutely crazy. I try to push through, but I'm like, oh, here we go again. That's something that I expect, is when the author doesn't treat me like I'm stupid by jamming a concept down my throat and weaves it in there more subtly, because it's pretty obvious by their action. They don't have to keep telling me to convey an emotion or a concept that this person feels guilt, and explain it to me over and over and over again throughout the story. Like, I'm not stupid. So there's things like that that I expect now more because I'm a more critical reader. So yeah, moving on. Secondly, I read a lot more. Instead of reading just being a casual pastime as it used to be, maybe just picking up a book here and there, reading has become a priority. I attribute that mostly to Booktube, because I started watching Booktube before I started my channel, as most people have and should. So Booktube has made me more aware of all these different types of books that are out there that I didn't even know were there. The synopsis on the back of the book, if you don't know what the book is about and you're just browsing and you want something to read, you just pick up a book and read the synopsis. Honestly, most synopses do not do the book justice. Watching people's wrap-ups and them talk from personal experience and actually pointing out the things that readers would want to know that are also non-spoilery really pushed me to be interested in something that I was never interested in before. I found myself being really interested in a lot of contemporaries this way, because I've never considered myself like a contemporary reader, and we'll kind of get into that more. I've discovered a more wider genre because of BookTube, booktubers explaining their experience with the book, things that stood out to them that were wonderful, things they didn't quite like about it, but somebody else might. So that's something that has made me read more, is just that there are so many books I want to read that I could never even read in a lifetime. I already know which books I want to move on to next while I'm still reading a book. So I'm like, it pushes me to read more. Next is my taste in books. Now, it hasn't exactly changed. I'm still very much into fantasy, dystopian. I love me some YA books, but it has really expanded. Now, before BookTube, that's pretty much the only thing that I would read. Something I've talked about on my channel before is my gateway drug to reading were the Twilight books. Before then, I really wasn't a huge reader. I didn't enjoy reading. I just hadn't found, not to say that I didn't read, I read way, way less. So my taste in books has really expanded since BookTube. I've discovered a lot of contemporary books, which I would, even like several months ago, I said, I really don't read contemporary books. But I can't say that I don't like contemporaries anymore, because this past year, I've probably picked up about 4 or 5, and they were all 5-star reads for me. I really enjoyed them. Number 4, I no longer enjoy spending my money on clothes. I do, of course, go clothes shopping every now and again, like I need a pair of shorts, but I don't aim to just go out and go shopping for clothes and hit up all the clothing stores. I'll go shopping now and hit up all the bookstores or thrift stores to look for books. So that has really changed. Before BookTube, I used to only read 1 book at a time, and now I usually have about 3 books going at once. Number 6, this isn't exactly about my reading taste, but I'm always thinking about YouTube content. Whenever I pick up a book, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to talk about this book later in a monthly wrap-up, so I really try to remember details about the book so that I can discuss them when I do a wrap-up. Number 7 is annotations, and this kind of goes with the last one, is I'm always thinking about wrapping up my books at the end, so I need to make sure that I remember certain points as I'm reading along. Now, I don't annotate every single book. I mostly page flag my books. Any books that I'm really enjoying, or it's a fantasy and there's so much to remember about the book. If it's a really hyped up book, I want to make notes so that I can discuss them later on. The most obvious example is Harry Potter. Whenever there's video challenges, Harry Potter characters are always used. It's such an easy, fun way to use characters for video challenges. You need to know certain details, the way they talk, some phrases that they commonly use, the way they look, their personal hobbies, so that you can incorporate those kinds of things into your video to make them more like the character, especially, if you're just kind of casually dressing up as the character. It's kind of hard to convey who that character is unless you incorporate their personality into the character. Those kinds of things, when I'm reading a book that I think that I could use a character for future video projects, I start page flagging those little details. Also, if the characters have any tattoos, those add to the character when you're developing your character for like different challenges or something like that. Not all booktubers participate in challenges like that, but I personally really love doing things like that. I love making really fun and creative content like that. So those things matter to me, so that's what I do when I annotate. Number 8, I really don't watch as much TV and movies or listen to music at all. Not to say that I'm just like all books, no TV, I'm ready to chuck my TV out the window. Absolutely not. I still love my TV shows. But for the most time, I'm just not motivated to sit down and watch TV when I could read a book. Also, when I'm just running around cleaning the house, most people like to turn on some music or background noise. I would much rather listen to an audiobook while I'm cleaning. And honestly, I get so engaged in the story that it doesn't feel like work. Like, it helps me do other tasks that like maybe I've been procrastinating on, because if I'm really into the story, I might as well be doing something while I'm listening to the story. So I end up getting a lot of those tasks done. Also, I'd much rather watch BookTube than TV or create videos. Number 9, I have learned so much. There's so much about publishing industry, which I still don't know a whole lot about, but there's things like ARCs that I had no idea about, that you could potentially get books that haven't been released yet and get the first opportunity to read them and review them and hype them up for the authors. There is this whole world of self-published books, which is amazing, and I think that as readers, we need to give them more of a chance to compete with other authors. because you know that there are authors that anything they write will get published, even if it's not that great, just because they're a well-known author. And there's so much talent, don't have a reputation yet as an author, but their work is fantastic, and it'd be maybe your next favorite book, somebody who has self-published, but you don't even know about their book because not on the bestsellers list or something like that. So I think that that's something that's really important to, as a booktuber, to recognize and try to bring awareness to your viewers. There seems to be endless genres. Something that's really important to me is reading a more diverse array of genres than I used to, and growing my interest in different types of books, kind of like what we were talking about before. In my notebook, I like to write down how many adult books I read, because it's not something I normally read. There's a bunch of classics that I want to get to, so how many classics have I read this year? Things like that are important to me to keep track of, and at the end of the year, end of the month, or 6 months through, I can see, oh, look it, I've only read all fantasy books this year, maybe I need to mix it up a little bit. So it makes me aware that I am being the type of reader that only reads from such genre, and maybe I need to expand. I'm trying to figure out where each book kind of fits in to a genre. Is this considered a fantasy, or is it considered a dystopian? Something that's kind of new to me, the difference between a dystopian and a utopian. I kind of feel like it's the same thing. I don't know. Or the difference between a post-apocalyptic and a dystopian, because aren't those kind of the same thing? There just seems to be such a huge array of genres and subgenres. I still haven't even grasped them all. Did you even know that there was something called legal lit? I think it's under the umbrella term of mysteries, but under mysteries there's legal lit, which is, and that's the only one I can think of right now, but they all take place in a courtroom. Basically, they're your main characters are going to be attorneys solving some kind of case in a courtroom, which I know about that because of my degree as a paralegal. I did pick up some legal lit books. I picked up a couple of John Grisham books. The one that I did pick up that I still haven't gotten to yet, I really, really need to, is King of Torts, because I ended up picking that up right before I started my semester in my torts class. That was probably one of my favorite classes. I really loved my torts class. Anyways, so that's something that I learned is wow, there are so many different types of genres. Number 10 is that I care a lot more about what my books look like. Yeah, I do still buy paperbacks. I'm not the kind of person that only buys hardbacks. I do still buy a lot of paperbacks, especially when I'm on a budget. And also when I'm not 100% sure I'm going to really get engaged in the story, or that I'm going to care about it as much. So I have no problem buying paperbacks. However, I used to buy the little small ones. These were the only ones I'd buy because they're $5, whereas these are a little bit more expensive, sometimes upwards of $11, $12. These now, I just have such a hard time reading these, especially when they're really thick books. This one's pretty decent size. This one's going to be totally fine. But when I just feel the words are so cramped. I mean, this is so much easier to read. I don't know. I don't like holding these little books. I like this size of book. So I buy the bigger paperbacks. Of course, I do prefer a beautiful hardback. And these aren't just because it's beautiful, because, this is a beautiful cover as well. But the benefits of having a hardback is that as most booktubers, we love having our bookshelves, and not most booktubers, I can't say that, because some people, feel a little bit bad about not having bookshelves. Me personally, I like having a bookshelf, which I don't have right now, but when I get my bookshelves, I want my books to look beautiful on the shelf. It's going to be a focal point in my living room, and when people come over, I want them to see beautiful books, not tore up books. To me, it is important. I love having a library, and I want it to look beautiful. Having a hardback is obviously wonderful for that, but it's not honestly, having a hardback is really beneficial too to protecting your book, because this looks beautiful on your shelf, but then you can, when you're reading it, you can take the book jacket off, and the pages are protected, so you can stick them in your bag and not worry about bending the cover, because that's happened to me so many times. Reading and opening the book, you're not going to crack the spine. Spine's still going to look really nice. And then when you're done reading the book, you put your beautiful book jacket back on, good as new. So that is a problem with the paperbacks. If you try to carry them around in your purse, you risk the corners of these getting frayed. Sometimes I've stuck these in here and I've been in a really big rush and I drop my keys in, and my keys literally go in between the pages and crinkle the pages, fold the pages down. Yeah. So that is a risk with paperbacks. Also, cracking the spine. Now, I didn't used to care about that. I'm like, who cares? Crack the spine. You've read the book. Who cares? But I kind of care now. I see the difference of the cracked, like it's all wrinkled and tore up. And, you know, here's this one I haven't read. It is possible, though, to read a paperback and not crack the spine. It's not even that hard. Like, if you're not like me and you think I'm a total weirdo, like a lot of booktubers do this, I've noticed. But that's how I am. I've gotten to that point where I want the spines to look beautiful, because that's what you're gonna see when it's sitting on my shelf. So even if this gets bent a little bit or the corners get frayed, I don't care as much, because when it's on my shelf, you're not going to see it, but you are going to see the spine. This book looks brand new, and obviously this book was loved. I read this book and the spine isn't broke. So it is possible. Now, here's a book that my husband read, and so I am like afraid to let him touch any of my books. Like I really want him to read Six of Crows. I think he's really going to love it. I think he should read the whole Grisha trilogy. I mean, he read the Divergent series, he read Hunger Games, and he liked all of those. So I think he'd get into the whole Grisha universe. But if he doesn't read anything, I want him to read Six of Crows, because this book was so fantastic. Something more that like, so I want him to read it, but I'm really, really afraid of letting him borrow my copy, because here's what happens to books after he reads them. Okay? I mean, this isn't even that bad. This really isn't that bad. But, I mean, it is pretty tore up. Obviously, it got wet. The pages are super yellowed, which that's just going to happen anyways over time if you've had a book for a really long time. I'm afraid of him doing this to my precious Six of Crows book. I do also have a secondary copy, a hardcover of Six of Crows, but I don't have the Crooked Kingdom in the hardback. I've become really anal retentive about my books and protecting them. They're going to get a little naturally torn up from wear and tear. If we can avoid destroying them, that's something that's not important to my husband, which is totally cool, but I care, so I don't really want to let him use my book. I did talk about this already okay, my apologies. Turns out I've already discussed number 11 in another one, so we're gonna skip it. So number 12, or number 11. Lastly, I never want to be a writer. I actually used to keep a journal. Always. I've always kept a journal since I was little, and for my birthday my mom would always get me a new journal because she knew how much I loved it. I always thought, you know, one day I'll probably write a book. I actually quit writing in my journal a good maybe 11 or 12 years ago, something like that. I really just kind of quit journaling. I didn't see the value in it anymore, except for a whole bunch of dusty old books that held a lot of my life that I didn't want anyone finding. So I did end up throwing away a lot of my books. There are a few I still do have, which I'm kind of afraid to reread them because, yeah, there are details in there, embarrassing moments that would just make me cringe. So I kind of don't want to reread them. And if I died, like, I'd be really afraid of anybody reading them, so I should probably do something about that. But yeah, I kind of lost the value in just kind of recording everything that I did as I used to journal. Now, back in the day, it was very therapeutic. I really needed that in my life growing up. But now that I'm an adult and I'm so much more busy and I've really focused in on using my spare time to do things like Booktube or any other hobbies that I like, I just don't see the value in sitting for hours and just recording what I did each day because honestly, my life's pretty boring. So, and Booktube is kind of a way of, especially if you're into doing vlogs, is kind of your own way of recording happy moments in your life. And even if it's not a vlog, in a lot of videos, go back and remember what you were doing at that time. So it's a different way of recording different moments in your life. Anyways, back to writers. I have so much respect for them. I don't know how. Again, I'm going to talk about Six of Crows because I felt like it was so clever. There was this end goal, this heist, and like there were so many elements between what they needed to accomplish and how they were going to get there and tools they were going to use to their benefit, and then also how they get duped and how the job didn't go awry and figuring out how to write that into the story. Like, it was just so clever. I mean, it's a work of art. It's just amazing how somebody puts together these stories. Even books that aren't as cleverly written, just the creativity that goes into putting together a story. It's just, I have the utmost respect for writers. And also, as someone who likes to create things, and I've always kind of talked about selling my own arts and craft, like my bookmarks, knitted things. I like to knit, and I've always kind of talked about selling some of those things. But when it comes down to it, I'm really nervous about putting them out there. Like, what if nobody likes them? So and that's on a really small scale. And so writers have to seriously have a thick skin. Now, I do have a thick skin, but to have something that's so personal that you put all your love, heart, and soul and all your time and energy into, to have it picked apart, that's really tough. Thank authors for still doing it regardless of the negative reviews they get. Now, with that being said, I am one who loves negative reviews, and that is nothing about the author, but I just have a lot of fun with them. I really do. I can't help it. I love watching negative reviews. One of the people, I'm going to do a shout out to Chapter Barbara for this, because I loved her review on Becoming Mara Dyer. Like, she absolutely loathed this book and she picked it apart. But at the same time, I'm really nervous about putting a negative review like that out there. But that's kind of like, I want to get over it a little bit, and like, if people want to hate on me for having negative reviews like that, then whatever, you don't have to watch. But I love making them. The closest I've done so far, I've only done a couple so far. I briefly talked about, oh my gosh, is it Libba Bray who did the Beauty Queen book? I briefly did like a little bit of a negative review within a wrap-up a long time ago. And then the closest one is, which I've talked about this book a few times, but in 2 of the videos, I don't think they're going to get uploaded. But, my mid-year freakout tag discussed some things in that book that were really problematic for me and how much I really didn't like it. So I still want to do like a thorough review on that book. So I love watching them, and I want to make more of them and talk about books I really didn't like and pick them apart and tell you exactly why I didn't like it. I'm going to go ahead. That's going to be like my only disclaimer is I'm sorry, not sorry. Because I like watching them. I like making them. It doesn't mean it's nothing against the author. It's not even always against the story, because obviously people really loved Cruel Prince. I feel like I'm probably one of the only people that doesn't like it. So, I'm just a little peon, okay, in the whole mass of people who obviously love the book. So I just wanted to share my feelings with it. So this is probably going to be the only disclaimer, because I really don't believe in saying, no, I'm really sorry, but I didn't like this book, so don't hate on me, whatever, because, like, hey, I didn't like the book. Anyways, I think that that's all I have to say. So anyone who's potentially thinking about becoming a booktuber, just keep doing it. Even after 1 year, I feel really happy to be in front of the camera and recording, editing my videos and putting them out there, and feeling more confident I'm putting out better quality videos. Keep working at it. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.